My brother and I have been close since we were kids. Even after we became adults, until he got married, we often spent our weekends together. Years passed since he got married. One day, when I assumed he was living happily, I received a shocking message from him. "I'm being accused of an affair I know nothing about, and they're demanding compensation in the divorce court." It seemed that my sincere and earnest brother was being sued by his sister-in-law. I immediately headed to my brother's house. My name is Ava. I'm a 31-year-old woman working as a lawyer. After graduating from law school, I became a lawyer and now work at a prominent firm. I always struggled with studies, so it wasn't an easy journey to get where I am today. Still, I became a lawyer and now live a busy but fulfilling life. Of course, every day is a day of learning, and I think it'll always be. But I have a unique hobby: gaming. I'm what you call a gamer, and when I have time, I play online games with my brother, also a gamer. Samuel, my brother, who's 5 years older, supported me during my college admissions and bar exams. We're still very close. I was forming my career as a lawyer while enjoying games with Samuel. But since he got married last year, we played less frequently. One relaxed weekend at home, Samuel called. "Hey, do you have a moment? I need some advice." It was unusual for reliable Samuel to ask for guidance. Though surprised, I listened closely. "Lately, my wife's been acting strange. She's out often and sometimes doesn't come home at night. I hope I'm just overthinking." Samuel began talking about his wife, Charlotte. He said she often wasn't home when he returned from work, and sometimes didn't come home at all without notice. I only met Charlotte at their wedding, so I don't know her well. But from our few meetings, she seemed friendly. So I was taken aback. It's not inherently wrong to stay out late or go out, but if it happens too often, it's concerning. If there are relationship issues or infidelity, something has to be done. That's why Samuel consulted me, being a lawyer, about potential solutions. However, from a legal perspective, you can't do anything without evidence. Moreover, involving a lawyer isn't the most peaceful solution, especially without any proof against his wife. Since I didn't have a clear picture of the situation, I decided not to intervene just yet. "I totally get why you'd be anxious," I began, "but without more details, it's hard to say. There's a chance she might just be out having fun. If you really want to know, our office is partnered with a detective agency. I can introduce you if you like." Right now, there was little I could do. However, if Samuel was truly concerned, I thought it might be best for him to look into it. So I suggested he hires a detective. "A detective, huh?" Samuel mused. "That's an option. I'm swamped with work, so I can't investigate it myself. I'll think it over." Samuel's response was non-committal. Regardless, I sent the detective agency's details to Samuel's computer. "Let me know if you decide to hire them. I'll make the necessary arrangements from my end," I reassured. "Thanks." Samuel replied with a sigh and ended the call. His demeanor was notably downcast. The situation seemed even graver than I initially thought. Days turned into weeks, and Samuel neither contacted the detective nor reached out to me. Was he too busy, or had things settled down with Charlotte? Eventually, I decided to check in with him. "Samuel, how have you been?" Any updates on the situation with Charlotte? It seems you haven't engaged the detective." I genuinely hoped Samuel's concerns were unfounded. However, from his tone, it was evident that things weren't great. "It's not resolved," he admitted gloomily. "I considered hiring the detective, but Charlotte manages our finances, my salary, everything. I can't afford the detective's fees." Samuel explained the situation in a somber tone. Despite feeling helpless, Charlotte's behavior hasn't changed, and it seems he's been living with anxiety for several months. "I get it. Hiring a detective can be pretty expensive." Samuel's allowance wouldn't nearly cover the investigation fees. Hearing Samuel's disheartened voice made me feel heavy-hearted as well. "All right, I'll help out. Let me see what I can do from here. So don't be too down, Samuel." I owed him big. I thought of this as an opportunity to repay a favor and told Samuel so. I wanted to alleviate Samuel's worries, even if just a little. I asked Samuel to wait a bit and ended the call for the day. A few weeks later, I stumbled upon some unsettling information about Charlotte. Before I could share it with Samuel, he called, sounding more frantic than ever. "Is everything okay?" "Something's come up," he blurted out. I braced myself for what Samuel would reveal next. "Charlotte is threatening to sue me for alimony based on false allegations of infidelity. She even has a lawyer demanding compensation for our pending divorce, claiming they'll proceed legally if I don't pay." It sounded like Samuel had been ambushed by Charlotte and her lawyer, with unexpected demands. He explained that he had secretly called me during a break from their intense discussion. Hearing this, I was at a loss for words. I knew Samuel wasn't the type to cheat. Samuel himself probably has no idea at all. That's why he's saying it's fabricated. So, Charlotte is claiming compensation in the divorce trial based on a non-existent affair story about Samuel. Samuel is genuinely a good person who is kind to everyone. Having seen many victims of scams and frauds at work, I was always worried about good-hearted Samuel. I often wondered if he might someday be deceived. But I never imagined this deception would come from his own spouse. So, what's the situation? What's the other side saying? I mean, Samuel isn't having an affair, so this claim seems far-fetched. Given that he had received a call in the middle of our conversation, it was uncertain when Samuel might be taken back. I needed to learn as much as possible about Samuel's situation in this brief time, so I quickly pressed Samuel for details. He shared that someone had snapped a photo of him during a business meeting with a female colleague, and now they were using it as proof of an affair. In the photo, both of them were dressed professionally, and the location wasn't suggestive in any way. It was clear they were forcibly trying to frame it as evidence of infidelity. There were a few things that struck me as odd at this point, specifically the approach of the opposing lawyer. A lawyer is a professional after all. They wouldn't do anything to harm their client's interests. If it's a case of infidelity, they'll do their utmost to reduce the compensation amount in a divorce trial if their client is the one having the affair. If their client is the victim, the lawyer's job is to claim the maximum compensation. But demanding compensation based on such flimsy evidence was highly suspicious. If they truly studied law, then they're a truly terrible lawyer. If such unreasonable demands were met, anyone could make wild compensation claims. There was no need to accept such an absurd request. As a family, I couldn't stand by and do nothing. "Samuel, I'm coming over right now. Don't answer anything they say until I get there. Just stay put and wait for me." I decided to step in as Samuel's lawyer and talk to Charlotte and her lawyer. From lounging in my casual clothes, I quickly changed into my suit, shifting into work mode. I called a taxi and headed to Samuel's house as fast as I could. Upon arrival, I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. It was Samuel who answered, and he welcomed me inside. Heading to the living room, I found Charlotte sitting next to an unfamiliar man. This man seemed to be Charlotte's attorney. Both of them looked at me in surprise. "Sister-in-law, it's been a while." I greeted Charlotte briefly and then introduced myself to the man beside her. "Nice to meet you. I'm Ava, an attorney. I'm here today representing Samuel." At my words, both Charlotte and her attorney looked shocked. "What? Ava? A lawyer? You're joking, right?" Charlotte mumbled, exchanging a quick glance with the man beside her. It's understandable that she was taken aback. She had no idea that I practiced law. I had been approached for free consultations and mentioned behind my back, leading to past troubles. As a result, I seldom share my profession with anyone other than close friends and family. Of course, that includes relatives too. Samuel understood my sentiments, so he never mentioned my job to Charlotte. That's probably why she was so surprised to see me step in as a lawyer. Charlotte controlled Samuel's income. He wouldn't have the means to hire a lawyer under normal circumstances. Perhaps she thought Samuel would be defenseless and took this opportunity to make her claims. Silently seated were Charlotte and her attorney. As I was pondering the next move, Charlotte's supposed lawyer spoke up. "I don't care if you're a lawyer or not. Your brother cheated. He should obviously pay compensation, right?" Beside him, Charlotte nodded in agreement. Did they genuinely believe they could win compensation in a divorce case with that? "What do you have as evidence of this alleged affair?" While I could never believe any tales of Samuel's infidelity, the two kept insisting even after I arrived. Wondering if they had any additional evidence beyond what Samuel shared with me, I pressed the opposing lawyer. "He was having dinner with another woman. That's solid proof. Let's say we'll let it slide for $50,000. You wouldn't want this getting out to family or his workplace, would you?" The man's words could be construed as a threat. I almost chuckled, demanding $50,000 based on such a flimsy accusation. Doesn't he realize how ridiculous he sounds? His bold claims only made me want to laugh more. By this point, my suspicions were nearly confirmed. That this attorney might just be a fake. Despite being a so-called attorney, he had employed what seemed like threats against Samuel. Something that had caught my attention from the start. I initially thought he might just be a corrupt lawyer, but even with a genuine attorney like me present, he kept making statements no real lawyer would utter. Claiming $50,000 compensation based on a mere public meeting is absurd. Just being in a suit in broad daylight in a public place doesn't prove infidelity. To prove adultery, there needs to be direct evidence of actual misconduct. Any attorney would know this. It's a fundamental aspect of the law. If he doesn't even know this, something's off. "I understand your concerns," I began, "but we can't just agree to the payment. Sir, could you provide your attorney license number and your full name? If you could also provide the name of your firm, I'll get in touch to set up another meeting." I pressed the opposing lawyer for his credentials. As expected, he began to falter. "I can't quite remember my license number right now. I must have forgotten. Please contact my wife for appointments." Forgetting one's own attorney license number? That's unimaginable for a real attorney. It's clear he's trying to deflect and quickly exit the situation. You can't say it, can you? Because you're not a real lawyer. I hit the nail on the head. I thought he would admit it now, but he defiantly countered. What are you talking about? That's absurd. I could sue you for defamation. If he could, I wished he would. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. If you're genuine, then tell me. A trustworthy attorney wouldn't hide their identity. And a real attorney wouldn't threaten to sue over such a minor issue. I replied with a smirk, leaving him speechless. The tables seemed to have turned. Both Charlotte and the imposter attorney looked defeated. Now, the ball was in my court. Mr. Fake Attorney, aren't you actually Logan, sister-in-law's former classmate? You work in sales, don't you? Hearing this, the two of them looked up in shock. Samuel, who had been quietly watching the exchange beside me, looked at me in surprise. You're not an attorney. Your sister-in-law's affair partner. It wasn't Samuel having the affair. It was you two, wasn't it? Am I right, Charlotte? Everyone in the room was taken aback by my revelations. The sudden appearance of an attorney who knew everything must have been startling. I had been consulted by Samuel, and after learning he couldn't afford to investigate, I took matters into my own hands. I couldn't stand seeing Samuel so distressed. An investigation revealed Charlotte's affair. I had been informed of every detail about the man she was seeing, including his identity. When I arrived at the house and saw Charlotte with the man next door, I was equally taken aback. Turns out, the man who claimed to be Charlotte's lawyer was actually her affair partner. I had done my homework. I let them know I had plenty of evidence of Charlotte's affair and reminded them that Charlotte and her partner would be the ones paying compensation. So, are you still planning to claim compensation from Samuel? Upon hearing my question, both Charlotte and Logan silently shook their heads. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Please forgive me. Perhaps realizing she would be the one paying, Charlotte's tone shifted to remorseful and apologetic. Logan, seeing Charlotte's demeanor, gave a slight nod of his head. Charlotte then began to talk about the fake affair. It seemed Logan had expressed his wish to marry her, and she had felt the same way. They decided to fabricate an affair to push for the divorce. The idea of also getting compensation money seemed like a good plan to her. It baffles me how someone could think, let alone execute, such a plan. Then Samuel, who had been silent till now, spoke up. You betray someone and try to frame them with a crime. You think just saying sorry will settle it? I've always trusted you as my wife, so be prepared for the consequences of what you have trampled upon. Samuel spoke calmly, but with palpable anger towards Charlotte. He was right. A mere apology can't make up for such deceit. You might not be aware, but claiming to be a lawyer without a license is a serious crime. You could face jail time or a hefty fine. And Logan, you're implicated too. There's no escaping this. Upon hearing this, both of their faces turned pale. It seemed they hadn't anticipated the gravity of the situation. Charlotte, in a frantic tone, said, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't know. I truly apologize. Logan quickly stood up from his chair and also began to deeply apologize. I'm truly sorry. We didn't think it through. Please forgive us. Their fervent apologies were a stark contrast to their earlier demands. It was a foolish display. "I don't care what happens to you two. I'm reporting this," Samuel declared. It's often said that the kindest people have the fiercest anger. Samuel, without a second glance at the desperately apologizing duo, went on to make his report. "Wait, please, just spare us that." Ignoring their pleas, Samuel called the authorities. In the end, both were arrested. They eventually faced prison time. In the end, Samuel and his wife divorced, and the compensation from the divorce settlement offset any other financial matters. They agreed to have no future interactions. Charlotte was left without any defense, reduced to just tears. They tried to benefit by deceiving others and falsely accusing them. It was indeed a case of facing the consequences of their own actions. Regretting now is too late, but hopefully they would change for the better. After the divorce, Samuel seemed to have regained his old spirit. Ever since getting married, Samuel and I have been enjoying online gaming, something he had set aside for a while. After the whole divorce debacle with Charlotte, Samuel moved out of the room they shared and started anew in a different place, trying to shift his feelings and begin a fresh chapter. For a while, he seemed to have lost trust in people and kept his distance. But lately, I've noticed he's been slowly venturing out for meals with friends. Once Samuel feels a bit more settled, I'm thinking of introducing him to some of my trustworthy friends. More than anything, after all the hurt he's been through, I want Samuel to find happiness.
I'm Ellen, 32 years old. I've been dating Jim for 6 years, and after 5 proposals, I finally got a yes. Now we're deep in wedding planning, but I'm so happy. I can't help but hum a tune. Wow, we're really getting married. One day while looking over our prenup, I was feeling on top of the world. But Jim, does this really matter? As I signed the contract, I tilted my head in wonder. You see, Jim's one condition for accepting my proposal was to have a prenup.
Assets we bring into the marriage stay our own. No meddling in future inheritances. If things change, like having kids, we'll revise the contract.
I get that it's important, but did we need it in writing? When I asked, he said,
Well, think of it as insurance.
Oddly vague. But if that's all it takes to marry Jim, I didn't dwell on it. However, the reason behind this would soon come to light. Jim has 2 older brothers. I met them briefly before the wedding during a visit to my future in-laws.
They're not bad, but both are a little quirky. Listen to them, but don't take everything to heart. Otherwise, you'll get carried away.
Caught off guard by Jim's blunt intro, I chuckled awkwardly, noticing that even my future in-laws agreed. I didn't think much of it, especially since our next meeting was at the wedding. Then, out of nowhere, I get a call one day when Jim's working over the weekend.
Hey, do you like fish?
Caught off guard, I hesitated. Who is this? I rack my brain for anyone who calls me Ellen, but no one comes to mind. But wait, they know my home phone number, so it can't be a stranger. I think to myself as roaring laughter comes from the other end.
It's me, Jim's big bro. Your big brother, Ellen.
My brother-in-law? Wait, is it the eldest or the second son? And what's with Ellen's big brother? I hold my tongue and ask, what's going on?
We're just back from fishing and caught a ton of rainbow trout. Can't eat 'em all, so thought you might like some. Jim loves trout meunier,
he says, which immediately lifts my spirits. Thank you. Jim is working today, but he'll be thrilled to have meunier when he gets back. I hang up and dart to the fridge. Good thing I have onions, bell peppers, and carrots in stock. Just as I finish julienning a heap of vegetables, Someone arrives. Ah, it was Evan. I open the door and smile. Then,
Quick, the bathroom, and cover the taxi fare for me, will ya?
Okay. I pay the taxi driver as my brother-in-law rushes to the toilet. After settling the bill, Evan comes out of the bathroom, takes a deep breath, and grins.
Thanks. And while you're at it,
My brother-in-law extends his palm towards me.
hand over some cash.
Huh? Reading my confusion, he clarifies.
For the fish. Let's say $50 should do it.
What? I nearly dropped my wallet in surprise. I should have asked earlier, but I had assumed that the fish were for sharing, not buying. Of course, I felt bad for just taking. So I had prepared some unopened premium snacks as a thank you gift. So I wasn't expecting it to be totally free, but $50? My brother-in-law looks at me as if it's only natural for me to pay. He's made the effort to come here. He's brought a lot of fish, and the last thing I want is for this to turn sour. I calm myself and pull $50 from my wallet and hand it to him.
Thanks. The fish are in the cooler. I'll leave the gear here. Tell Jim to get it back to my place later. Gotta go.
Wait, Evan? I'm puzzled by the casually abandoned cooler and fishing gear in the foyer. Ignoring my confusion, my brother-in-law takes the $50 and swiftly leaves. Wait a second. He's already gone, leaving me blocked in by the gear. What the? Why leave all this stuff here? Our place isn't big. It's in the way. Oh, and the taxi fare. I remember that he hasn't paid me back for fronting the cab fee. I hesitate to ask Jim to both take the gear back home and collect the taxi money. Then when I open the large cooler my brother-in-law left behind, I can't believe my eyes. On a bed of overly piled ice lay only 3 small trout, each barely 2 inches long. You've got to be kidding me. I slumped down in my doorway, defeated. What am I going to do with the shredded veggies? I had other issues, but I was too stunned for other words. Months later, I found myself heading to a cafe.
I have something important to discuss, but keep it a secret from my brother.
The one who reached out in a desperate tone was Brant. My brother-in-law warned that it was an important matter that also could affect my husband's future, and insisted that I shouldn't even tell my parents-in-law or my husband. Though it felt a bit sketchy, the cafe he chose wasn't a shady place, and it was during daylight hours, so I decided to at least hear him out.
Ellen, over here.
As I walk into the cafe, I'm greeted loudly by name. The shout echoes in the cafe, drawing the eyes of other patrons in my direction. Embarrassed, I nod my apologies to the surrounding customers and hastily head toward my brother-in-law's table.
Haha, you're so shy, so cute, Ellen.
His loud voice again attracts attention, making me cringe. Could you keep it down? Cutting off my request for him to speak more quietly, he blurted,
Let me introduce you. This is my new girlfriend.
A beautiful woman stands up from a spot I couldn't see. Hi, nice to meet you. Suddenly, I'm slapped hard across the face by a woman who angrily shouts, Are you kidding me? I'm left stunned, my cheek tingling. Why did a woman I just met slap me? As I'm losing my words, the woman storms out, loudly declaring, This woman is your new girlfriend. I'm disgusted. Goodbye to you. What the... Evan, what is going on? I wince at the pain on my cheek as I start to demand an explanation. Why did this just happen? Anger surges up inside me. You said this was important regarding my husband's future. Outrageous, I protested. But my brother-in-law just laughed it off. My brother-in-law chuckles.
Sorry, we were breaking up. You helped me clear the air. Thanks for playing the role of the girlfriend. Hey, don't get mad. Let's talk this through, Ellen.
Don't call me Ellen. Although I'm furious, my brother-in-law is unfazed.
Oh, come on. This kind of thing happens.
Are you kidding me? This is the first time something like this has happened to me. How can I possibly stay calm? I couldn't help but yell. Then my brother-in-law says,
Wow, Ellen, you're scarier than you look. Surprising. But hey, look around. You're freaking out the other customers.
I snap back to reality. As I look around, I see a multitude of faces staring at me. Confusion, annoyance, curiosity. Unable to withstand the gazes, I crouch down. My brother-in-law strides past me.
Well, see you. Say hi to Jim for me.
Evan, wait! Before I could catch up, he's out of the cafe. Then a timid waiter approaches me.
I'm sorry, your bill?
What the heck is going on? I wouldn't have shouted just like that if no one were around to hear me. I was fed up with Evan and Brant for what they had put me through. I told my husband everything, and we agreed to ignore any messages from his brothers, unless absolutely necessary. Any necessary communication would go through my husband, and that's how we'd been handling it. But when it comes to my parents-in-law, it's a different story. They've always been wonderful to me, and besides, they're my beloved husband's parents. There's no way I could say no to joining their 60th birthday celebration. Wow, this place is bigger than I imagined. It's breathtaking, and the garden looks amazing. Is that a guest house? Yes, the main house is relatively new, but the guest house is a relocated traditional home. It's about 230 years old. Thatched roofs and verandas? Does that work well? Can I take pictures later? My mother-in-law, who loves old buildings, looked delighted, which made me smile too. Of course. My mother-in-law's cheeks flushed charmingly, and next to her my father-in-law leaned against a thick pillar, squinting in satisfaction. They both looked incredibly happy. They'd requested the party be held in this old house I'd recently inherited from my grandparents. Our first meeting was during a tour of old buildings. We sat side by side on the porch, had coffee, and hit it off when we realized we were the same age. It was some time ago when my father-in-law shared his bashful story of how he and my mother-in-law first met. Perhaps I should have invited you before we started moving the furniture. I felt a pang of regret. This house had been rented out as a restaurant until last week. After its closing, they had requested to tour the empty place, but maybe I should have shown it to them when it was still furnished. No worries, it's perfect this way. The peace and quiet lets us really soak in the atmosphere, my mother-in-law reassured me. True to their word, my parents-in-law arrived 2 hours earlier than the party was scheduled, taking their time exploring the house and enjoying coffee on the veranda. And then, the peaceful atmosphere was broken by noisy footsteps.
What? Only Jim is here to welcome us? No one else? And catering for dinner? Seriously?
It's hard to believe. The only one who gently set Brant straight was my husband, Jim.
Come on, this is Mom's request, and you act like it's a letdown. But this is a deluxe bento box from a popular restaurant.
Jim says this with his usual smile, the one I love so much.
You act like it's just any lunchbox. Why didn't you just book the place during business hours? You're too cautious, Jim.
Evan sighed as he said this. But seriously, how much does he think it costs to book an entire upscale restaurant? You're complaining about today's party expenses being high, and you call me frugal? Plus, they haven't even paid me back for the cab fare from when they dumped those 3 measly trout on me, or for the expenses from their lovers' quarrel. I can't just let them walk all over me. I muttered some choice words under my breath. This was all unfolding on the day of my in-laws' 60th birthday celebration. As soon as my parents-in-law were off exploring another part of the estate, Brant blurted out,
Hey, I've got a great idea.
Yeah, your great idea doesn't usually mean good news for me. I must have shown my thoughts in my face because my husband sitting next to me looked concerned. And sure enough, both Evan and Brant started to smirk.
We're family, aren't we?
My husband tilted his head, clearly puzzled by the sudden inquiry.
This place is closed now, right? Yes it is.
My husband nodded, and the 2 brothers leaned in eagerly.
Man, you hit the jackpot, marrying into money. Yeah, really. You've got this massive estate all to yourself now.
They sang this in a sycophantic duet.
Are you guys misunderstanding something?
But my husband's words went in one ear and out the other.
Can't hog it all to yourself, right? A little sharing won't hurt.
At this point, their enthusiasm almost made me nauseous. Then it dawned on me. What would you like? I forced a smile, and their eyes lit up. They clearly thought that my inheritance was also my husband's, and by extension theirs to enjoy. As if. When the topic of my inheritance came up, my husband asked,
"You've stored the prenup safely, right?"
"I promise I won't interfere with what's yours, but I'm here if you ever need advice." That's what my husband said, and he really never asks for even a single dollar. I love how kind, clear-headed, and continually endearing my husband is. In stark contrast, the pitiful state of the two brothers. With people like that, there's no need for reservations.
The location is prime real estate. Just step outside and you can get whatever you want right away. Plus, the mansion is really massive. I mean, it's too big, isn't it?
Evan remarks.
What if we told him, "From today, your brother's family is going to live here. Cut ties if you're not okay with it."
Brant says, grinning. I took a deep breath. Sure. The brothers tilted their heads in unison.
Really?
Despite having initiated the conversation, they seemed a bit taken aback when I reassured them. It's fine, really. Feel free to do as you please. Not just Evan's family, but you too, Brant. Here are the keys. Handing them the bundle of keys, they all looked pleased with themselves.
Good on you for being so understanding. Nice going, sis.
Eagerly, they began their moving preparations.
Ellen?
I turned my real smile toward my concerned husband. Don't worry, it's all good. Fast forward to a few days later. We were relaxing at home when the doorbell was frantically rung. Opening it, we found my brothers-in-law pale as ghosts.
What the hell is going on? Tell them to stop now.
They were panicking, full of desperation.
Our house is being demolished. We got home, and there were heavy machines tearing it down. We told them to stop, but they won't listen.
So what are you going to do about it? That was the general vibe coming from my brothers-in-law when I calmly chimed in. Well, that makes sense. Everyone's eyes suddenly turned to me.
What do you mean?
A tower apartment is going to be built there. They can't build it without tearing down the house, can they?
Huh?
Both my brothers-in-law were dumbfounded. The reason the fancy restaurant shut down, or rather moved, was for that project. We kept the utility contracts through the end of last month because of the 60th birthday celebration. Was today inconvenient for you?
Aha.
Realization dawned on them, and they went pale.
Is this some kind of joke, Ellen?
Even if they say it's a joke, the bulldozer's already here, so there's no room for jokes. Especially when the bulldozer is already here. What's the point of lying about this? Maybe you should start taking out some valuables. Tired of their complaints, I laid out the harsh reality for my brothers-in-law. Look, I made it clear when I asked for the demolition. Please get rid of everything left in the house. If the bulldozer is already working, I guess this will be over sooner rather than later. If I were you, I'd stop complaining and start taking out the important stuff. They looked at each other and then yelled,
"This is bad! Go, go, go! Hurry up!"
As I watched the two rush out, I turned to my husband. Nobody really told them, huh? My husband sighed deeply with a wry smile.
We've all been strung along enough. Maybe a hard lesson is what they need. I hope it wasn't too much trouble for the workers, though.
Yes, I had informed not only my husband, but also my in-laws that I'd given the keys to my brothers-in-law and that they were planning to move. Of course, I'd also told them that the house was already sold, including the date of the turnover. So the decision was in their hands, whether or not to tell their brothers-in-law about the truth. In the end, everyone kept quiet. Don't worry, the buyer and the contractors are already in the loop, I assured them. I had a feeling it would come to this, so I had explained it to the buyer in advance.
I hope they learned their lesson,
my husband said. With that, we went to sleep. The next day, I can't believe they went this far. My mother-in-law sighed heavily. In the living room, my brothers-in-law seemed to shrink. They couldn't get in during the daytime because the workers stopped them, so they snuck in at night.
Well...
Yes, they had ignored the no trespassing signs and tried to take valuables in the middle of the night. But a neighbor noticed their flashlight and called the cops, so they were easily caught. So you even managed to get into trouble with the police without taking anything of importance, my mother-in-law continued.
Well, you see.
My brothers-in-law attempted to explain, but no one was interested in their excuses. The past wrongdoings also came up, making it even worse for them.
Both of you should apologize to Ellen,
my husband said. But then Brant, who had been meek until now, suddenly snapped at me.
It's her fault to begin with. She tricked us. She willingly gave us the keys. Yeah, right. What's with this hypocrite? Selling the house without even telling us?
Faced with their unjust accusations, I could only offer a wry smile. I think you're misunderstanding. That property, both the land and the building, were inherited by me. Jim even drafted a prenuptial agreement to protect it. So you guys never had any rights to it to begin with.
What prenup? Contract?
I had no intention of elaborating on the term prenuptial agreement, which seemed like a curse word to them. Also, the sale of the land and house was consistent with my grandparents' wishes. They had considered selling it several times before, and yet my grandparents had wanted to keep it as long as they were alive. To be honest, maintaining it was too much work, so when I inherited it, my grandparents had suggested I proceed with selling it. So I just followed through with the realtor my grandparents trusted. Of course, it's my right to sell the property. My brother-in-law has no say in it.
But aren't we family? Don't be petty.
While considering whether my brother-in-law would argue further, I think back on my past. I started taking marriage seriously about 3 years ago. My dad raised me all by himself. My mom passed away right after giving birth to me. Dad and I were the best of friends. We'd go camping in the summer and snowboarding in the winter. So many memories. But then, out of nowhere, he got sick and passed away. I felt pathetic for never being able to do anything for him, and it broke my heart to feel his absence in the home we had shared. My husband is the one who comforted and supported me through this. He helped me with the funeral and rituals, made warm soup for me when I couldn't move all day, and spent nights talking about memories with Dad. He was there for me, patiently and lovingly, as I came to terms with my father's passing. If we're getting married, if we're going to be together forever, it has to be you, Jim. If there's something you don't like about me, tell me and I'll change. I shouted that during my 5th proposal, and I convinced Jim, who hesitated because of his troublesome family, to marry me. I don't regret that decision one bit. I always wanted to honor my grandparents' wishes after my dad passed away. And then there are these in-laws of mine. You haven't learned your lesson, have you? I was going to go easy on you, but not anymore. I'm going to demand compensation for all the trouble you've caused.
That includes taxi fares, overpriced fish, emotional distress from slaps, food and drinks at the cafe, utilities you used extravagantly in that mansion, and more.
My husband enumerates the damages, leaving my in-laws speechless.
Are you serious? Down to the last detail? Are you thieves or what?
And then there was more to come for my tearful in-laws.
We're cutting ties. Yikes. Wait, Dad, please.
Afterward, they were ousted from the family, shunned by distant relatives, and left with no one but each other in a tiny one-room apartment. Is this really okay? It's so wonderful. In the newly built tower condominium, we became neighbors on the same floor with my parents-in-law. Of course, one of the sale conditions was that we'd get a whole floor in exchange for the land. Thank you for accommodating my wishes. Some parts of the old house my grandparents left behind, like beams and furniture, were incorporated into our new home. We took new photos with my in-laws. We'll display these next to the old pictures. Captured there were the smiles of all my loved ones. I resolved to cherish these smiles forever.
Hey, what's with that attitude? It's Christmas. Work with me here.
My husband kept saying that, but I was so overwhelmed by pain that I couldn't even think straight. Hold on, my stomach hurts really bad right now. I tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen.
Seriously? You're probably faking it. You're so cowardly.
Please, it really hurts. If I end up in the hospital, I won't be able to take care of our daughter. Come home now.
You need to stop this. I told you not to embarrass me in front of the relatives. Don't tarnish my reputation. Just bear with the stomach pain.
He shouted. Then he hung up the phone. Exhausted from the conversation, I sat down, feeling a wet sensation below. Oh, no, my water broke. I tried to move quickly, but the pain intensified, and I couldn't move. I needed to clean up. But first, what about our daughter? As I tried to bear the pain, my daughter, concerned, entered the room. Mom, what happened? My name is Emily, a 35-year-old office worker. I live with my husband Henry, also an office worker, and our daughter Lily, who's in the 3rd grade. I had Lily when I was 24 and hadn't been pregnant for a while, so I thought I wouldn't have another child. But to my surprise, I'm pregnant again after 9 years and due next January. It's unexpected, but my heart swells with joy. Lily is over the moon about getting a sibling. I'll help take care of the baby. However, there's one person who isn't thrilled about the pregnancy. My husband Henry. I'm currently on maternity leave, and he keeps complaining, saying things like, I am just eating for free. I mean, whose child does he think this is? It's ours. Plus, I'm still getting paid during my leave. I avoid confronting him because it seems to hurt his pride. But lately, Lily has been standing up for me. She's a great communicator, and she often leaves Henry speechless. Mom's taking a break because she's having a baby. Giving birth is tough, and you wouldn't understand, Dad. She's been doing housework even while pregnant. Why are you being so mean to her? Henry, flustered and embarrassed, often retreats to his room with a red face. Thanks to Lily, I've been spared from Henry's snide remarks. She's been reading books about pregnancy and childbirth with me, and I'm proud of how smart she's become. Still, I feel guilty for letting her witness our arguments. She would prefer if we got along after all. I have been diligent with housework, partly out of guilt towards Henry, who's always working, but then something happened. Henry loves his childhood home and often goes back for holidays and other occasions. If he went alone, I wouldn't mind, but he always insists I come with him, saying,
It's a wife's duty. Don't embarrass me in front of the relatives.
Saying things like that ignores my feeling and takes me away. It's a 6-hour drive to his parents' house, so we always stay overnight. My in-laws were considerate, suggesting, it must be hard to come every time. Let's just gather for Christmas. However, Henry would insist.
Don't you care about the home I grew up in?
Just because we value your parents' home doesn't mean we have to go back every time. It might be a bit much to visit so often, don't you think? I tried reasoning, but he would argue,
It's the home I grew up in. Showing up with my wife and kids is a way to honor my parents. Are you trying to prevent me from doing that?
There were many times we wouldn't agree. In fact, when our daughter was born, I had high blood pressure from the pregnancy. I collapsed at my in-laws and ended up in the hospital. Yet Henry was adamant about going back the next Christmas. I just want to stay home this time. We don't know what might happen, I pleaded.
Pregnancy isn't an illness. There's no need to worry so much.
He would retort, It's not about liking or disliking your family's home. I'm genuinely concerned. I can't believe he expects me to sit in the car for 6 hours with this huge belly. Though I didn't need to be hospitalized this time, I want to rest at home, especially after what happened last time. Please, just listen to me. If something happens, you're the only one I can rely on. Can't you just stay home this Christmas? Even after I pleaded, Henry didn't budge. Instead, he got angrier, his face turning red.
You just don't want to go back to my family's home, do you? I have been regularly seeing the doctor and they say everything's fine.
I never said I didn't want to go. I'm just genuinely worried.
Oh, really? Then you talk to my family about it.
With that, Henry started dialing his parents' house. He handed me the phone. Reluctantly, I took it and Ethan answered. Ethan and his wife live with Henry's parents. Since Ethan and his wife are already there, I don't see why we need to visit so often.
Hello, Henry.
Oh, Ethan, sorry, it's Emily.
Oh, Emily, what's up?
Ethan, I'm sorry, but with the baby due around Christmas, I was hoping to stay home. Hearing this, Ethan responded,
Of course, that's understandable. This is a challenging time for you, and you shouldn't have to stress about family obligations.
His words, "Take care of yourself," brought tears to my eyes. Ethan continued with comforting words.
We should have been more considerate last time. We should have stopped you from coming.
No, it was my fault.
Don't say that. You're the one going through the most. It's only natural for us to be considerate. Let us know if there is any way we can help. We're excited about the new addition to the family.
What a kind person. I couldn't help but vent about Henry. He's insisting we go to his parents' house next Christmas too. Even when I express my concerns about the baby possibly arriving soon, he brushes them off. He even accused me of not wanting to repay his parents' kindness. As I explained, my voice quivered. Ethan asked,
Can you put it on speaker and call Henry? What is it, Ethan? Henry, are you seriously trying to bring Emily home for Christmas? Yeah, but she's being stubborn and doesn't want to. Do you even understand why she's hesitant? What? She probably just doesn't want to be around my family. She's being selfish.
Ethan's anger was palpable.
Have you forgotten what happened last time? What if it happens again? We were genuinely worried when Emily was hospitalized. And now you're just brushing it off? Are you a doctor? The condition she was diagnosed with last time could have been life-threatening for her and the baby. How would you take responsibility if something happened? And making her travel for 6 hours? What if she faints on the highway? How long would it take for an ambulance to arrive? Have you even considered the safety of Emily and the baby? Prioritizing Christmas at our place over the birth of your child is something even a child would understand.
It took Ethan's stern words for Henry to finally calm down. Looking at Henry, his face had gone pale. It's unbelievable that he needed such a strong wake-up call. Then Ethan said to me,
I am truly sorry for the trouble Henry has caused you. Please accept my apologies on his behalf. Spend Christmas at home and relax. I'll let Mom and the relatives know.
After the call, Henry, looking embarrassed, muttered,
Ethan worries too much.
From now on, I'll consult Ethan whenever Henry gives me trouble. Despite the earlier drama, thanks to Ethan's intervention, I spent the early days of December in peace. But as Christmas approached, Henry began grumbling about not going to his parents' house. Then came Christmas Eve. After finishing the cleaning and Christmas preparations, my daughter and I were relaxing. Suddenly, Henry said,
I need to buy something,
and left in the car in the afternoon. Night came and he still hadn't returned. He didn't answer my calls. So my daughter and I had our Christmas dinner, sang some carols, and tried to enjoy the evening. Where could Henry be? With that thought in the back of my mind, we had our Christmas cake and spent a peaceful Christmas Eve. The next morning, Christmas Day, Henry still hadn't returned. I wished he would at least contact me. His prolonged absence was concerning. Though we don't live in a heavy snowfall area, accidents can happen. Feeling a mix of irritation and worry, my daughter and I began our meal. Then I received a call from Henry. There was a lot of noise in the background.
Hey, you should come over too.
Come where?
To my childhood home, of course.
What?
All the relatives are here having a drink. Hurry up.
Turns out, Henry had gone to his parents' house on Christmas Eve. You said you were going shopping. Was that a lie?
I don't know, but I might eat your portion too.
Henry was clearly drunk. After all my pleas, he hadn't understood at all. My daughter looked worried. To avoid a fight, I continued the call in another room. Just ask Ethan or a relative to drive you home. As I said this, a sudden pain hit me. But even in this situation, Henry's tone became more irritated.
Hey, what's with that attitude? I've been putting up with your whims. Cooperate for once. It's Christmas.
I have only asked him to be patient for Christmas, and he hasn't been cooperative at all.
It's embarrassing if everyone's there and we are the only ones missing.
Henry kept going on, but I was distracted by the increasing pain. Oh, wait, I'm in a lot of pain right now. It's getting worse. I tried to convey my situation, but Henry wouldn't listen.
Really? You're probably faking it. You're so deceitful.
It really hurts. If I get hospitalized, who will take care of our daughter? Come home now.
You stop it. I told you not to embarrass me in front of the relatives. Don't tarnish my reputation. Just bear with the pain.
Henry shouted. The call abruptly ended. Exhausted from the exchange with Henry, I slumped down, only to feel a wet sensation below. Oh no! My water broke! I tried to move, but the pain was intensifying. I needed to clean up. But more importantly, what about my daughter? As I tried to bear the pain, my daughter, looking worried, entered the room. Mom, where's Dad? Sorry, Lily, can you come here for a moment? What's wrong, Mom? Lily, can you call an ambulance with this phone? Paralyzed by pain, all I could do was ask. Lily, seeing my state, was clearly shaken and unsure. I realized I hadn't taught her how to call for help. Before I could explain, she exclaimed, "I'll get the neighbor!" and dashed out. In a moment, our neighbor arrived. Lily, realizing she couldn't handle the situation, had wisely sought an adult's help. "Emily, are you okay? I'll call an ambulance right away." My neighbor said so and called an ambulance. I had never been more grateful for a good relationship with our neighbors. Lily held my hand and comforted me. While waiting for the ambulance, the neighbor contacted my parents. Finally, the ambulance arrived, and I gave birth later that day. The next day, my parents arrived at the hospital. Though a bit premature, it was a healthy baby boy. I tried contacting Henry, but he was unreachable and nowhere to be seen. He only showed up after the new year, brought by Ethan. Ethan came in with Henry. Ethan, though not involved, apologized to me.
I'm sorry for bringing Henry late. He turned off his phone since Christmas. I didn't realize what had happened to you.
While Ethan apologized, the one who should have been sorry, Henry, just sulked. Apparently, my father had been trying to reach Henry's phone, but ended up calling our home phone. "Ethan, I appreciate you coming, but I can't stand to see Henry right now. I'm even considering divorce." Upon hearing this, Henry, who had been sulking, looked up in shock.
What? You're so audacious. Who are you to talk about divorce?
Ethan was taken aback.
Hey, Henry, what are you saying? Emily is just exaggerating. She just wants attention.
Just then, the door opened.
What did you just say?
It was my father.
Oh, father-in-law.
Henry was visibly shaken. My father had just returned from lunch with my daughter.
Henry, do you always talk to my daughter like that? No, I mean, answer me.
Henry cringes at Dad's angry voice.
My daughter was in so much pain and you accused her of faking it? After seeing her now, can you still say that? Enough. She will recover at my house for a while and you won't see her or the baby. Got it? But...
Henry seemed to finally grasp the gravity of his actions.
Who will take care of me when I'm at work?
I take back my earlier thought. He is irredeemable.
Do it yourself. Emily worked and took care of the house even before her maternity leave, right? If you're an adult, you can manage.
Even as my father scolded him, Henry tried to argue, but Ethan stopped him.
I am truly sorry for Henry's behavior. Congratulations on the baby. Though it's late, please accept this gift.
Ethan handed over a gift and left with Henry. Dad, I'm sorry for the trouble.
When he came to ask for your hand, I thought he was a trustworthy man.
After that, I took some time to recover at my parents' house. Thankfully, my daughter was on winter break. After about 2 weeks, I went back to the house where Henry was, accompanied by my father. I left our baby boy and daughter in the care of my mother. Upon arriving home, I was met with the sight of Henry and a messy house littered with trash. It was clear he hadn't cooked. There were piles of fast food and delivery boxes. We sat in the living room, my father joining us, and I began the conversation with Henry. To be frank, I want a divorce, I said, handing Henry the divorce papers.
You're serious about the divorce?
Henry, Can't you even thank or acknowledge me for giving birth?
For what? It's natural for a mom to give birth. It's not like you're working.
Henry's attitude from the get-go was appalling. My father's expression grew stern. Henry continued with his nonsensical remarks.
So, the baby's a boy. Then I don't want a divorce. I've always wanted a son. I'll raise him to be a baseball player. Didn't Ichiro become a star because he practiced with his dad? I want to do that.
I was speechless. What did he think of his own child? I don't think Ichiro's dad thought of his son as a tool like you did. Before I could respond, the living room door burst open. I tried to wait patiently, but I can't stand listening to this nonsense anymore. It was my mother-in-law. Henry was taken aback by her sudden appearance. Henry, get a grip. Who do you think allows you to work stress-free? Who takes care of the kids in your absence? Who cooks every meal? Who keeps this house running? It's all thanks to Emily. Look at the state of this house after just 2 weeks without her. You are so ungrateful. Divorce is the only option. Don't trouble Emily anymore. Mother-in-law's outburst left Henry speechless. He signed the divorce papers without further protest. With that, our divorce was finalized. Through a lawyer, I ensured Henry would pay child support for both our daughter and son. As for Henry's current situation, he has been forcibly taken back to his parents' house. There, he's being trained by his mother and Ethan, doing daily chores and cooking. He seems to be struggling with the housework, often complaining about wanting to escape the house. It's ironic how the man who once loved being at his parents' house now despises it. On the other hand, I successfully completed my maternity leave and parental leave and returned to work. Thanks to the generosity of my in-laws, I was given the house Henry and I lived in as part of the property division. I'm truly grateful for their kindness, as they didn't want my daughter to transfer schools and feel lonely. My daughter seems to be disappointed in Henry because of what happened. She's refusing to see him even though we have just divorced. I don't intend to let my son see him either. I think I'll let Henry's parents set him straight. Maybe one day if he changes his ways and the kids want to see him, I might allow it. But that day might never come. Regardless, I'm determined to raise our children right. I'll work hard today and every day for the sake of my precious children.
What I cherish most is my family. I thought they felt the same way. That was until I inherited my father's estate. For better or worse, my life took a complete 180.
Can you stand in line at this store before it opens tomorrow and buy 10 of these for me?
My husband John, busy packing merchandise, makes a living by reselling items. He works at a small insurance company, but he missed the promotion wave and is nearing 40 with a salary equivalent to a new hire. I can't. I have a part-time job tomorrow morning. I hate to decline, but the extra income my husband earns makes a difference in our lives. I'm Katie. While being a mother of 2 kids, I also work part-time to help support our household. We struggle to make ends meet on my husband's salary alone, so I want to work full-time. But our youngest is still in preschool, so I'm planning to stick with part-time work for another year or 2. I work every day, save every penny. When you cut corners in life, it's like your spirit gets chipped away too. Oh, how I wish I could win the lottery or something. I've noticed that this thought crosses my mind more often than it should. I know a lot of people who talk about their husbands dying just for the insurance money. So I guess I'm doing all right, all things considered. My husband keeps saying things like,
Maybe I should aim for fire so I can retire early and take it easy.
But honestly, he's all talk and shows no signs of actually making it happen. I'd like a little more breathing room in our current life, not just in retirement. Although I voiced my concerns, there's no solution in sight. For now, all I can do is focus on the work and parenting tasks at hand.
Oh, by the way, my dad and his friends are coming to stay this weekend.
Caught off guard, I took a hard look at my husband's face. This weekend? It's Thursday today. They're coming tomorrow? You should have told me sooner. My tone got harsh because I don't get along with my in-laws. I lost my mom when I was young, and my dad raised me on his own. My in-laws are all about appearances, and just because I didn't have both parents when we got married, they deemed me uneducated. I had my challenges growing up without siblings, but my dad was both loving and strict. Lately, he's been under the weather, probably from the strain of raising me single-handedly, and I worry about him. I visit my childhood home about once a month, but it seems neither my in-laws nor my husband are pleased with that. Whenever I go to my childhood home, I don't always take the kids with me. Last week, my mother-in-law Jennifer complained about this over the phone. Now my in-laws will be at our home for the next 3 days. Just thinking about it makes my stomach turn.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you, haha.
My husband says this casually. He won't lift a finger when his parents are here, and doesn't even bother spending time with them. I'm the one who has to handle the chores, take care of the kids, and entertain my in-laws as well. But like it or not, they're coming. The next day, I went to the airport to pick them up and brought them to our apartment. Still living in this place, I see. You should move to the town where we live. We could even start living together sooner if you want. I've heard this same spiel from my mother-in-law every time she visits. I deliberately live far away because I don't want to live with my in-laws. And for the record, it was your son who first decided to live in this area. I make these sarcastic remarks in my mind while making coffee and forcing a smile. In the in-law household, what my mother-in-law says goes, and my father-in-law just nods along in agreement. Since they arrive in the middle of a weekday, my husband and kids aren't around, and I become their sole target for criticism. By evening, when the kids return home, my in-laws switch gears. All of a sudden, they're the generous grandpa and grandma, willing to buy the kids anything they want. Oh, look how big you've gotten. Are you enjoying school? How about preschool? If there's anything you want, I'll buy it for you. They dote on my sons like this. While my son chats about school and keeps my in-laws entertained, I get started on preparing dinner, grateful for the small reprieve. Just as dinner was ready, my husband walked through the door. While we were all eating, my in-laws suddenly brought up the idea of living together. So, do you like staying at Grandma's house? You had fun during the summer vacation, didn't you? If you live with Grandma and Grandpa, we'll buy you whatever you want, and every day will be fun. Trying to get the kids on her side, my mother-in-law gets this fake smile from me in response. Jennifer, that's not a settled matter. If the kids take it seriously, it'll become a problem. Hearing that, my mother-in-law rolls her eyes and looks at me. Oh, so they shouldn't take it seriously. Some families with kids the same age as our grandchildren just moved into our neighborhood. It's lively and I'm envious. Even though she says that, it has nothing to do with us. Plus, if we lived together, I'd feel even more like a servant than I do now.
It's not a big deal. We might consider it eventually. But we like it here, so not just yet.
He sounds like he's gently pushing back, but that's definitely not the case. My husband seems gung-ho about living with his parents, completely ignoring my feelings on the matter. Why can't he be more assertive in declining his parents' request? He's really not reliable. Contrary to how I feel, he starts talking about finances.
I think life would be easier if we lived with my parents. If we moved, the kids would have to change schools, so it might be better while they're still young.
My in-laws were delighted and offered to help, but there's no way I can accept it. Once you take any financial aid from them, it's easy to imagine them reminding you about the favor every chance they get, even if you've paid them back. Also, right now we live about a 20-minute drive from my parents, but if we move in with my in-laws, that distance will increase and make it much harder for me to visit my own family. Avoiding a clear answer, I finish dinner. As the kids and my in-laws begin to take a bath together, I'm left with no moment to catch my breath, immediately starting on cleaning up after the meal. My husband is drinking beer and watching TV. How long will this kind of life continue? Both the money issues and the attitudes of my husband and in-laws weigh on me. If only we had enough money, we could live without these complicated ties. With these thoughts, I somehow managed to get through the 3-day stay with my in-laws and went back to my daily routine of childcare and part-time work. Then that day came. My father, William, passed away. His body has been weak due to a hard life when he was younger, and he quickly succumbed to pneumonia after catching a cold. He passed away shortly after being hospitalized, so I couldn't even visit him. I let my only parent die alone. Dad, I'm sorry. During the funeral, I couldn't help but apologize to my father over and over again in my mind as I cried. I can't help but think that if I had been more attentive, Dad might have gone to the hospital sooner. But what's the point of thinking about that now? The funeral is over and a few days have passed. I still haven't recovered from the grief of losing my father. It's then that my husband spoke these words.
It's been over a week since William passed away. Katie, you've got to pull yourself together. The kids are worried, you know? There's no point in staying down forever.
He's right. Staying downcast isn't good for the kids. I get it. But it's only been a week, you know? Just as I was thinking that, my husband dropped a bombshell.
Let's go on a trip with Mom and the others. It won't bring William back. Besides, you still have my dad. It's like you have an extra dad, so why the excessive grief, haha.
Pulled back to reality in the midst of my sadness, I retorted, "What the heck is that about, John? Would you say the same thing if one of your parents passed away?" Even as I responded emotionally, he just laughed it off with an expression as if it was no big deal.
Wow, my parents are tough cookies, haha.
In that moment, I couldn't hide my astonishment at the fact that I'd been living with someone so emotionally tone-deaf as a family member. I can't believe you. I want a divorce. A divorce. Even as I shouted that, the economic realities made divorce seem like a distant dream. And there's no way I'd hand my kids over to him. Knowing he has the upper hand, my husband just laughed it off. What was I thinking marrying someone like this? Why did I marry someone like this? After yet another moment of regret, I slept in a different room that night. We haven't spoken a word since I brought up divorce. Judging by the fact that he neither apologizes nor tries to make amends, he doesn't seem to be showing any remorse. Then one day, I learned for the first time that I was to inherit some land from my father's will. Land? I had never heard a word about this from my dad before he passed away. Thinking it must be some mistake, I checked multiple times with the lawyer who was holding my father's will, but it seemed that inheriting the land was confirmed. How had he been getting by with so little money? But the details remain a mystery. A few days later, after taking care of the inheritance paperwork, my still estranged husband spoke to me.
Tough day, huh? I'm sorry for what I said without thinking about your feelings, Katie. Let's forget about divorce, okay?
I can't forgive him yet for brushing off my father's death, but when it comes to divorce, issues like custody and living arrangements make me anxious. So I decided to revert to our old way of life for now. Yeah, maybe you're right, but it might take a bit for things to feel normal again. Still grappling with my father's passing, I decided to change the subject and told my husband about the land inheritance. That turned out to be a mistake. I may not know much about land, but I immediately noticed a change in his demeanor.
Really? William had land? I had no clue. So, how much is it worth?
As he asked, he kept stealing glances at me, gauging my reaction. I think it's about $50,000. I had a bad feeling, so I quickly lied about the amount. In reality, I have no idea how much the land is worth. I'm not interested in the land, so I just went through the formalities of the inheritance and came home. Hearing this, my husband, visibly excited, said,
Now we can make life easier for Dad and others. We could even live together and finally have some financial wiggle room.
I reiterated that I had no intention of living together with others, but my husband skipped off to the bedroom anyway. Feeling like I'd gotten myself into a complicated situation, I went to sleep without figuring out what to do with the inherited land. Early the next morning, I was woken up by loud doorbell ringing, and when I opened the door, there stood my father-in-law, David, and mother-in-law, Jennifer. David, Jennifer, what's the sudden visit about? Were you planning to come today? Still groggy and confused, I asked, only for Jennifer to assertively say, We're coming in. We have a favor to ask today, and marched right in. Still in shock, I see my husband, who's home because it's Sunday, waking up and exchanging glances with his parents. No sooner had they arrived than my mother-in-law, seated in the living room, offered a gift she'd brought, unusually so. I bought these muffins first thing in the morning. The cafe is so popular, it gets on TV all the time. I wanted Katie to try them, so I lined up before the shop opened to buy them. Hearing her talk so excitedly, I looked at my husband. He had the same expression he'd had last night after discussing the land. I see. Sure, if you suddenly get your hands on $50,000, you might want to start talking about living together at your in-laws. According to my husband and his parents, the plan is to sell the inherited land, turn it into cash, and then use that money to renovate their house so both families can live there. So that's the deal with the gift. But to think the only gift I get for $50,000 is a muffin, I felt underestimated. I began to think that maybe it would be better to find out the real value of the land. So while they were busy discussing their dream home, I decided to look up average land prices on my smartphone. I'd thrown out that $50,000 number arbitrarily. What if the actual value was much less? With that thought, I searched for land prices based on the area and size. Wait, $2.4 million? As unbelievable as it seemed, it looked like my father's land was worth much more than a mere $50,000. If this is true, firm in my resolve, I spat out, I have no intention of selling my father's land or agreeing to live with you. Stop making plans without consulting me. Then I left the house. There were things I wanted to confirm away from prying ears. I made several phone calls that day and timed my return for after my in-laws had gone home. For the next 2 weeks, I was quietly making preparations for a plan that no one noticed. Then came the day to put that plan into action. Uncharacteristically, I greeted my in-laws fully prepared. They arrived with gifts and started talking about their dreams for our new home. My husband joined in, so to stop him, I shoved divorce papers in his face.
Katie, stop kidding around. You're not seriously thinking of divorcing me, right? Haha, just to keep a $50,000 piece of land all to yourself? Even if we divorce, I won't give up custody.
Thinking I wouldn't go through with the divorce, my husband acted confident. That was until I pulled out my mobile phone and his face turned pale. I'm connected with your boss, Mr. Cooper, right now. You haven't been showing up for work lately, have you? You're too focused on buying up products for your side gig, neglecting your main job.
What? Mr. Cooper? This isn't what it looks like. John, I got concerned because you haven't shown up for work all week due to illness. So I contacted Katie and now I find out you're faking it. You're fired, effective immediately.
With that, my husband was sobbing, trying to explain himself to his boss. But the decision was final. He was fired. Seeing all this, my in-laws raised a fuss, calling me a terrible wife for entrapping their son. They insisted he should divorce me, so I succeeded in getting them to sign the divorce papers.
I don't want a divorce. Please forgive me.
My husband was crying and begging until the end, but it seemed he couldn't defy his mother's words. So I ended up in a custody battle, but with him being unemployed and neglectful towards childcare, there's no way he's winning custody. Things are going my way, just like I hoped. Oh, speaking of that land, my dad owned a piece of property in Manhattan. I found out it's worth quite a bit online and got in touch with a legal advisor who helped my dad with land matters. Turns out my dad had been using the property as a paid parking lot. The reason he had almost no liquid assets was because he was living off the income from the parking lot. Located in a busy area, the lot brings in more money than we were making combined. Right now, I've kept the parking lot running, and I've reduced my work hours to part-time. We're peacefully living in the family home I had left behind, just the kids and me. As for my ex-husband, he moved back with his parents after the divorce and job loss. Turns out he's in debt because his mom went on a spending spree, thinking she'd have access to my money. He also failed at reselling stuff and is stuck with excess inventory. And once they found out the land is worth more than $50,000, my ex and his parents came at me, all desperate for a reunion. I have no intention of dealing with them anymore. We're planning to move soon, keeping the kids' education in mind. The players may have changed, but family still means the world to me.
This house is mine. I paid for it. Get out. You won't survive without me on your part-time wages. Ha ha ha. Henry sneers and gleefully unfolds the divorce papers. My name is Olivia and I'm 33 years old. Recently, I started working part-time at a nearby grocery store. I met Henry, my husband, at work. We got close, married 3 years ago, and I left my job soon after. Even though I wanted to continue working after marriage, Henry insisted that I become a homemaker. I reluctantly agreed, but couldn't shake off the desire to work again. After daily persuasion, Henry finally allowed me to work part-time. We want kids, but haven't been blessed yet. I wanted a pet and suggested getting a cat, but Henry hates them, so I gave up on the idea. Ever since I started working part-time, Henry criticizes everything I do. Did you go to work again today? The house is getting messy. Look at those wrinkled clothes. You're not keeping up with the chores. That's not true. I clean before going to work and the laundry is fine. What are you talking about? I've been managing everything perfectly. Henry retorts, the place looks dirty. Are you blind? And why is it always fried chicken? Can't you make something else? I don't make fried chicken that often. I try to vary our meals. I made your favorite fried chicken despite being short on time. I've prepared a variety of dishes. Henry doubles down when I push back. So, you're blaming your part-time job? Don't act so high and mighty. I earn enough for both of us. Do your chores properly and stop making excuses. It's embarrassing to see you work so hard for such a low wage. Henry always belittles me and my job. He wanted me to be a homemaker to maintain his image, not because we needed the money. He disapproves of my part-time job and takes every opportunity to mock me, asserting his financial superiority to unleash his verbal abuse. Even though he's my husband, I can't stand it when he degrades my work with harsh words. His words were ruining my mood every day. One day, we decided to go on a long-awaited drive to his parents' house. I had been irritated with him for a while, but I thought this outing would be a good break, so I was happy. At the time, I couldn't imagine that the visit to my in-laws would turn out the way it did. We drove for a few hours and finally arrived at his parents' home, where his mom was waiting for us. His mom, who lives alone, greeted us warmly. We had dinner prepared by her, and then my husband left to play poker. As his mom and I were doing the dishes, I noticed her demeanor change. She had been calm, but now her expression was stern. Wondering what was wrong, I made some coffee, and we sat down on the sofa. Then she spoke up. "Olivia, Henry told me you've been working part-time. Why do you need to work when Henry has a good job? And it sounds like you're not taking care of the house because of it." I was taken aback by her sudden questions. "No, that's not true. I'm doing my part-time at home." She widened her eyes dramatically. "I heard everything from Henry about how poorly you keep the house. Lying won't help. Henry has been suffering alone. He comes home to a dirty house after a hard day's work. You're even failing at cooking decent meals. Quit your part-time job. No one at your workplace would even care if you left. Your job is to be a homemaker. Don't embarrass yourself as Henry's wife." She's an old-fashioned woman who got married right after school and has never worked outside the home. My husband also believes that's what a wife should be like. That's why they both dislike the idea of me working. But her words were too much. I felt devastated by her heartless comment that my job doesn't matter and that no one would miss me if I left. I find my part-time job rewarding and everyone there is nice. They treat me well and rely on me. Tears filled my eyes as I couldn't believe they thought so little of me. What shocked me even more was that my husband was talking badly about me behind my back. I do manage our home. Actually, because of my part-time job, I've been putting in more effort to manage the house well. I know my husband's job is tough, so I've been doing my best to support him. But to think that he and his mom were talking bad about me over the phone, I just couldn't believe it. I was quite depressed for a few days, but then I remembered my dad's face. Ever since Mom passed away, he's been living alone in our family home. I haven't seen him for a while because I've been busy. I felt like hearing his voice, so I called him. Usually, he picks up right away, but that day the phone kept ringing. When I started to worry about why he wasn't picking up the phone, finally Dad answered. "Olivia, long time no see. How have you been?" Hearing Dad's calm voice, I felt relieved and tears started to flow. "What's going on? You didn't pick up for a while. Should I call back later if you are busy?" It seemed like Dad was out of breath. "No, sorry about that. I fell down the stairs recently and hurt my back. I can only move slowly right now, But it's nothing to worry about. I'll be fine soon. More importantly, is everything okay with you? I was genuinely shocked. I couldn't believe that my athletic dad had fallen down the stairs and hurt his back. No, I'm fine. Just please take it easy and get better soon. I'll come visit you before long. Though Dad kept saying he was fine, I started to worry. He's getting up there in age, and injuries could take a long time to heal. I had always taken his vitality for granted, but now I was anxious. Climbing stairs every day means there's always a chance he might trip and fall. On top of that, the stairs at my childhood home are pretty steep. The house is old, too, which means there are high steps leading into the entrance and bathroom. I became increasingly worried about Dad navigating the house while nursing his back. What if he seriously injured himself? I couldn't stand the thought. I had always wished to live closer, and now it seemed there was no time to hesitate. I made a significant decision to build a safer, more comfortable house for Dad near me. I had a hidden source of income that even my husband didn't know about. I had inherited an apartment business from my grandpa. Though technically it should belong to Dad, he had put it in my name for just-in-case scenarios. Dad always told me it's best not to talk about this, so even my husband doesn't know. I had saved all the rental income up until now. With that money, I could build Dad a new home. I've always been a worry for my dad, never really been able to give back to him. Now, I finally have a chance to give him the best gift of his life. The thought made my heart soar. However, building a new house would cost a significant amount, so I first needed my husband's understanding. I was on pins and needles, expecting another complaint and a big no, but instead, the response was, "You know, you might be right. Considering our age, maybe a new home is a better idea." Far from opposing, he graciously agreed. "Just don't come crying to me if you can't actually pull it off," he said, undermining me once again. Though it made me mad, I didn't want another fight, so I let it go. Now, the path was clear. I immediately started to search for reputable contractors and pushed ahead with the plans, though my husband didn't seem pleased. He didn't complain, but I could tell he wasn't fond of the idea. Then, one day, I was shocked when I went to the bank to withdraw money for groceries. $3,000 was missing from our account. I was shocked to see $3,000 missing from our joint account. I didn't remember spending that much money. There was only one person who could have done this. It was hard to believe my husband would take money without asking, but the reality was that the money was gone. That night, I confronted him. "Hey, I went to the bank today and $3,000 was withdrawn from our living expenses account. Do you know anything about this?" My husband smugly replied, "I gave it to my mom. You were talking about building a house, right? You must be stashing money somewhere. What's the big deal with $3,000? I couldn't believe my ears. "Why did you have to give her the money? It's not like my mother-in-law is broke. And that money is for our living expenses. You can't just give it away without asking me. That's totally unfair." My husband snapped back. "What do you know about my mom? She said she's struggling. What's wrong with a son helping his mother? Besides, I earned that money. What I do with it is none of your business. If you're upset, go earn your own money part-time. See, you've got nothing to say. Don't ever complain about what I do again," he shouted and stormed out of the room. I had always believed that even if my husband had a bad temper, he wouldn't betray me. It would have been better if he had just discussed giving money to his mother with me. Perhaps there was another way, and this fight could have been avoided. Was it that he thought I would object? Or did he not trust me? I felt like our marriage was getting worse, not better. The next day, my husband acted like nothing had happened and went to work. I didn't want to argue anymore, but the bad feeling lingered. Finally, our new home was completed. Thanks to a helpful construction company, we managed to build a beautiful home. I had arranged for a moving company to help my dad with the packing. Everything seemed to be going well. With just 2 weeks left until the moving day, I was brimming with joy at the thought of honoring my parents in the home I built. The plan for the big day was to go to the new house with my husband to help my dad unpack. But when we sat down to discuss the day's schedule, my husband dropped an unbelievable bombshell. "Hold on, that house isn't for your dad. I'm giving it to my mom. I have the right to decide who lives there." I was stunned. "That house is for my dad. I built it." Rushing my words, he retorted, "You, working part-time, could never afford to build a house. I built that house with my money." He seemed to genuinely believe he had paid for the house. Was his agreement to build the house in the first place because he intended it for his mother, not my dad? His behavior was appalling. Now, I had to prove that the house was built with my money. I had no choice but to reveal the rental income I had been silently earning. When I told my husband about my decision, he didn't believe me. "You're making up a crazy story just to get the house the way you want it. Why not come up with a better lie while you're at it?" And no one believed me, so my husband stormed off somewhere. I didn't know what to do, but I figured the only option was to keep explaining until they understood. With that thought in mind, I anxiously awaited his return, and when he finally came back, he looked furious. Then he blurted out, "You are trying to scam me," he yelled, "saying you built the house. That's my house. I built it. Pack your bags and get out. You won't survive on your part-time job salary. Ha ha ha." I was stunned, at a loss for words. It was too much, too fast. I had built that house, and being told to leave was shocking. "Sign this and be gone by tonight," my husband said, throwing the divorce papers on the table and walking away. His part was already filled out. After mocking me all this time, pushing a divorce paper in my face like I'm beneath him, that's just despicable. He must have done this awful act to bring me to despair. He probably thought that by bringing up divorce, I'd back down and let his mother move into our home. Sadly for him, I have enough income to sustain myself even without him. I reached my boiling point. I signed the divorce papers and left, heading to my dad's place with all my stuff. Dad was surprised but welcomed me warmly. "Come on in." After I told him everything, he patted me on the back. "Then let's live together in a new home. I'd be happier that way." He said just that. Moving day came and everything went smoothly, probably because my arrival sped up preparations. Although it felt eerie how my husband didn't make a fuss despite all his previous claims about the house being his, I tried not to think about it. Then, a few days into my new life with Dad, something unbelievable happened. Curious about the noise outside, I looked out the window. A moving truck had parked right in front of our house. Turns out, this is their new home. When I asked what was going on, I learned that my husband was the client and he'd be arriving with his mother soon. My dad and I already live in this house, and it looks like he's planning on moving in uninvited. We're already divorced, so he is practically a stranger now. We don't want him barging in. His pushy attitude creeped me out, so I told the movers to halt and rang up the police after consulting with my dad. After explaining the situation to the officers, they confirmed that not only did he have no right to live here, but even stepping foot inside against my will was illegal trespassing. Just then, my husband and mother-in-law strolled in, all relaxed. Upon seeing the police officer, they both started to panic and get flustered. It seemed like it finally dawned on my husband that I had built this house. But between a panicking mother-in-law at his side and a barrage of questions from the officer, he had already lost his composure. "Why can't I live here? What's going on?" He raised his voice, desperately trying to resist. Watching my husband act like that, I felt done dealing with him, but to protect me and my dad, I quietly handed my trump card to the police. Thanks to the cops, the situation was diffused, but he found himself in a pickle. He had already given up his apartment, so now he was stuck with a ton of belongings and nowhere to go. I was worried about my husband's repeated verbal abuse, or in other words, evidence of domestic violence. For quite some time, I couldn't stand his harsh words anymore. I'd planned to get back at him someday, so I installed surveillance cameras around the house and recorded everything. The footage showed me diligently doing housework and my husband relentlessly hurling unreasonable insults. Thanks to this evidence, I managed to corner him even further. I hired a lawyer and initiated a lawsuit, eventually securing a financial settlement in the divorce. My husband spent all his savings, the money from selling the family home and the settlement money on moving and compensating me. Now, it seems he's living in a rundown apartment with his mother. Word spread quickly at his workplace. Colleagues who noticed something off about his character started to distance themselves, leaving him isolated and scorned by everyone in the company. As for me, I finally got the cat I've always wanted. Dad's back is much better now. And we are even talking about taking a trip with the cat. I also used the settlement money to start a business that sells cat-related products. While the initial phase had its ups and downs, the customer base has slowly grown and the business is doing well. Life is peaceful and genuinely enjoyable every day. I never thought the steps I took for Dad's well-being would also lead to my own happiness. I truly feel it was the right decision. And there's another recent development that's made me happy. There's a man who frequently visits my shop and always has delightful conversations with me. He is a wonderful person, kind to both people and cats. We've planned to go for a drive together soon. I'm going to live my life freely and joyfully. The anticipation of new happiness ahead has my heart soaring.
You're 35 and way too old. Let's get a divorce. If you round up, you're basically 40. I'm cutting ties with you as a parent. Just leave. Could there be anyone else who gets yelled at like this by their husband and son? Especially on their birthday? It seems they no longer consider me as family. But this might be a blessing in disguise. I've been waiting for the perfect moment to get back at them. My name is Darcy, and I'm 34. I live with my 25-year-old husband Sam and our 19-year-old son. I gave birth to Jeff when I was just 16, a single mother. I worked hard to raise him and met my current husband in my late 20s. I'm truly grateful to Sam for accepting me and my child. Because of their close ages, my husband and son are more like buddies than father and son. Even before we got married, Jeff was attached to Sam, which was fine. But as time went on, the way they treated me started to change for the worse. One day, while I was cleaning, I found Jeff lying on the floor. "Hey Jeff, I'm about to vacuum. Can you move?" "What? Just do it when I'm not here." "What's with that attitude?
weren't you supposed to go for a part-time job interview today?
I felt lazy, so I skipped it.
What? We agreed you'd earn your own allowance. I just gave you $300 the other day.
If you're a parent, don't be stingy over $300.
Listen to this recording on my phone. You clearly said you'd earn your own money.
Shut up, old lady. Stop nagging.
When I played the recording, Jeff angrily lashed out. Lately, I've been recording their words because we often argue about who said what. Thankfully, I had this recording. After high school, Jeff neither got a job nor did anything productive. He just lazed around at home. He'd say he's going for a part-time job interview, but would either not show up or quit after a few days. Moreover, his attitude towards me worsened daily. A few years ago, Sam started calling me old, and Jeff picked up on it. While I was still in shock from Jeff's behavior, Sam came downstairs looking grumpy.
What's all this noise? You woke me up.
Sam, please say something to Jeff. He skipped his job interview again.
Oh, is that all? I'm trying to sleep in on my day off. Let me be.
What do you mean? Is that all?
You've been getting angry a lot lately. Is it menopause?
What? It's normal to get mad at a son who does nothing all day.
Whoa, scary. Women do get cranky with age. Watch out, Jeff.
Laughing at his dad's words, Jeff said,
Too funny.
How can they belittle their wife, their mother, to this extent? What on earth did I ever do to you two? Seeing that I wouldn't fight back, my husband and son kept hurling insults at me. Their close bond made them team up and mock me. Lately, they'd intentionally avoid eating the meals I prepared, or wouldn't come home until late at night. Sometimes my husband would even come home smelling of perfume. Can we really call this a family? I've started to wonder. Yet I remember the pain of giving birth to my son, and the man who accepted us and married me. So I tried to keep my reactions neutral. A few months later, I felt a bit brighter that day, because it was my 35th birthday. They might have forgotten, but I didn't care. I decided to treat myself and bought a cake and some appetizers after work. When I got home, surprisingly, both my husband and son were there to greet me. Why are you two here?
What are you talking about, Darcy? It's your birthday, right? Yeah, it's your birthday, so we came home early.
You remembered my birthday?
Of course, we're a family, aren't we? Just sit down, Mom. We've got everything ready.
I'm so happy. Thank you both. Honestly, I was deeply touched. For years, they didn't even remember my birthday. So knowing they cared enough to celebrate was heartwarming. 30 minutes later, my husband and son set the appetizers on plates and put candles on the cake. With big smiles, they said,
Happy birthday, Darcy. Happy birthday, Mom.
Thank you both so much.
We know it's been tough. Thanks for everything. Thanks, Mom.
Wait, thanks? Why past tense? I feel like this is a strange way to celebrate. Ignoring my confusion, Jeff urged,
Come on, blow out the candles.
After I did, they both stood up clapping.
Done. Good job. Man, that took forever. Finally free from the old lady.
Wait, what's going on?
Jeff, she still doesn't get it. Come on, Dad, you tell her. I can't stop laughing.
What did I do? I just blew out the candles. They then dropped a bombshell.
We're done with you. You served your purpose. Finally, we're free. Oh, that's right.
What are you talking about?
Don't you get it? We don't need a 35-year-old. We're divorcing. Round it up, and you're 40. We're cutting ties. Just leave.
My husband pulled out divorce papers from his bag and slammed them in front of me.
Here, I prepared everything.
Sam, are you serious about this divorce?
Obviously. Who'd want to be with an old lady like you?
Old lady?
Isn't it obvious? You're 10 years older than me. I don't want to take care of someone like that.
But when we got married, I asked you. I have a child and I'm 10 years older. Are you sure about this?
You were still in your late 20s then, and you were pretty.
But everyone ages. He sighed and mocked.
You think you're so special. Be grateful we even stayed with you past 30.
Jeff added.
Exactly. Did you ever think we needed you?
But I'm your real mother.
Gross. Stop acting all high and mighty. You had me at 16. You're just an old crazy person. We really don't care about you. Just leave.
In that moment, the fragile love I felt for my family shattered. So I'm no longer a part of this family. They've prepared the divorce papers, and even my son has rejected me. Then there's no need for me to endure this any longer. With determination, I signed the divorce papers in front of my husband and son. Is this what you wanted?
Wow, you made up your mind quickly. Giving up on us, huh? Feeling sorry for yourself now that we've dumped you?
I looked down at them and said, Given up? Dumped? No, I'm the one leaving you.
What are you talking about? Stop playing dumb, Jeff. She's just being bitter.
Enjoy your carefree life while you can. It won't last long. I grabbed the signed divorce papers and packed my things to leave. That night, I stayed in a cheap hotel, and the next day, I visited a lawyer's office I had in mind. Of course, to get back at my husband and son. A few weeks later, as expected, my husband called. Hello?
Darcy, what the hell is this?
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb. I just got this certified mail.
If you received it, then just follow the instructions.
You've got to be kidding. Why am I being asked to pay compensation for the divorce?
Why? Because you cheated. Yes, Sam had been having an affair. I had suspicions when he started coming home smelling of perfume. I even suspected he introduced his mistress to our son. I had hired a detective to gather evidence and was prepared for a divorce.
You knew about her?
Of course, I found out by accident.
Why didn't you say anything? Now you're demanding compensation after the divorce.
Why? Because I thought of you as family. I was devastated when I found out about the affair. I even thought of divorcing you right away, but I endured it because we were family. Tears welled up as I spoke my truth. I went to see a lawyer, vowing that I would no longer have any regrets about my husband, and I would sever ties with my son. I had hoped he might apologize and admit his mistakes, but that hope was shattered with this call.
Huh, so you still have feelings for me? I'll forget about the divorce if you drop the compensation claim.
You're serious? After all the insults in the affair? Not even an apology?
Why should I apologize?
Excuse me?
It's your fault for getting old. I did nothing wrong. It's all on you for aging.
Fine, I'll see you soon with my lawyer. I hung up and headed to my former home with my lawyer. Upon arrival, they greeted me with smug smiles.
Long time no see. How does it feel to be kicked out by your loving husband and son? You've aged a bit since we last saw you. Can't believe you're my mom. Dad's girlfriend is way hotter.
Same old with you two.
What do you want? If it's about the compensation, we're not paying. Get out. Just seeing you annoys me.
All right then. Please proceed, lawyer. Prompted, my lawyer began to explain on my behalf.
All right, Sam. We're demanding $20,000 in compensation for the divorce due to your affair. I already told you, I'm not paying. Additionally, we're asking for $10,000 for the emotional distress Darcy suffered from your verbal abuse. That's a total of $30,000. Wait, $30,000?
My husband was visibly shaken by the amount. Sweating, he appealed to the lawyer.
Wait a minute, this is ridiculous. I never verbally abused her. We have evidence, you know. What? Darcy has been recording your conversations just in case.
I initially did it to avoid he said, she said arguments. I never thought it would come to this. Nodding in agreement, the lawyer continued.
You have a very smart wife. She's gathered so much evidence, even unintentionally. This can't be. Just so you know, all the evidence Darcy has is valid. We've backed it up, so trying to take it from her and erase it won't work. That's all from me. Darcy, shall we go?
As we were about to leave, my husband shouted,
Wait!
What?
Please, Darcy, I can't afford $30,000.
That's not my problem. You brought this on yourself, remember? You're the one who handed me the divorce papers.
But I never thought it would come to this.
I exploded in anger. What are you saying now? After all the times you insulted me and called me old, now you want to back out of the divorce? You're too convenient.
But that was just a joke.
I have no intention of getting back with you. I'll make sure you pay the compensation for the divorce. I feel so relieved to be divorcing you. Go to hell, jerk. My husband's face turned pale, and he was speechless. Seeing this, my son hesitantly approached me.
Mom, wait,
What?
Well, if Dad pays the compensation, he won't have any money left.
What's your point?
You'll still give me an allowance, right? Like the usual $500 a month?
I couldn't help but laugh at his audacity.
What's so funny?
Why would I give you an allowance?
But you're my mom, and I'm still a minor.
Oh, didn't you know?
What?
The law changed in April. Adulthood starts at 18 now. So, you know what that means?
That means...
You're 19, an adult. I have no obligation to support you. Get a job, you lazy bum.
Mom!
I'm not your mom anymore. Just like you abandoned me, I'm abandoning you. I won't help you no matter what. You and your low-life father can sink together.
Wait, Mom!
Ignoring my ex-son's cries, I left with my lawyer. Soon after our divorce was finalized, my ex-husband apparently went into debt to pay me the compensation. He quickly remarried his mistress, but it turned out she had borrowed thousands from loan sharks under his name. She's now missing, and he's hiding from the debt collectors. Instead, he was arrested for black money and is now living in hiding. As for my ex-son, he got a part-time job at a grocery store, but was fired quickly due to his laziness. He's now often seen spending nights in parks. It's ironic how similar they are, even though they're not blood-related. Some might say it's irresponsible to abandon one's child, but I don't regret my decision. I have feelings too. I'm not a robot. I refuse to dedicate my life to such people after enduring so much. From now on, I'll cherish myself and live a life I can be proud of.
She's 20 years younger than me, and she's pregnant. We need to get divorced. Suddenly, my husband brought his mistress home, and then he asked for a divorce. Honestly, our marriage had been falling apart for a long time. I no longer loved him, the man who never helped with the kids or housework and was always out having fun. Here's the divorce papers. I'm taking everyone except our eldest son. I handed the papers to my husband, but then he said something shocking. What? Take our eldest son too? I couldn't believe it. That's not possible because he is... When I confronted him with the truth, he was stunned and fell to his knees. My name is Riley, and I'm 51 years old. I'm a housewife. I married my husband Aiden 14 years ago. We were introduced by mutual friends. I used to work as a web designer and was always focused on my job. I hadn't dated in years. Those friends introduced me to Aiden out of concern. He was friendly and a great conversationalist. I hadn't dated much, but I enjoyed spending time with him and thought we could build a happy life together. But our journey to marriage wasn't easy. He was divorced and had a child. His ex-wife had left him and their child, and he said he was working while raising the child. When I discussed this with family and friends, they all said it would be a mistake. You'll struggle after you get married. That's what everyone says in unison. But to me, this challenge only made my love for him stronger. I felt I had to support him, a single father. I started seeing his son Matthew more often. Matthew, what do you want to do today? I don't want to play with you. Do you want to eat something? I can make anything you want. I don't want it. Matthew never warmed up to me. Was I not good enough because I had no experience with kids? Whenever I felt insecure, my husband comforted me. It's okay. Matthew will understand someday. Thank you for caring about him so much. His words made me happy, and I didn't mind being rejected by Matthew. I'll love him as if he's my own child when we get married. I'm glad I met someone like you who can love Matthew too. Looking back, I might have been too proud, thinking I was his emotional support. Then, 6 months into our relationship, I got pregnant, and we got married. We had our daughter, Ella, and the next year, our son Henry was born. I became a mother of 3. I was busy raising 2 kids back to back, but my husband never helped. Riley, Henry is crying. Can you comfort him? I'm busy right now. Me? No way. He wants his mom, right? Even when I was taking care of our daughter, he'd hand me our crying son and play on his phone. He always came home late, drunk. On his days off, he'd leave in the morning and come back in the evening. We barely had time to talk. I was always taking care of the kids, with no time to sleep. The stress kept piling up. Can you help a little? What? I'm tired from work. You're home all day. Taking care of kids is a woman's job. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't have married him if I knew he was like this. I felt deceived. But, thinking of our newborn children, I couldn't easily ask for a divorce. Taking care of our restless second son and our daughter, who was going through her toddler tantrums, was really challenging. Still, I tried my best to be a good mother. My relationship with the eldest son, Matthew, remained distant. He hardly spoke to me. In the mornings, I'd wake him up for school and feed him, but we barely talked. I was so busy with the younger kids that I didn't have time to pay attention to Matthew. A few years later, as Matthew entered middle school, he became more rebellious. Matthew? Have you finished your homework, or are you just reading comics? Leave me alone! I'm just worried about you. That's what's annoying. Stop acting like a mom. Every time, he'd lash out and ignore me. I decided to talk to my husband about it. Can you talk to Matthew? He's always playing, not studying, and he doesn't listen to me. It's probably because of how you raised him. Maybe he doesn't listen because you've been too lenient? What? I don't want to hear that from someone who never helped and was always out. You think I was just playing around? My husband stood up angrily. No, you were always out drinking. You never helped when I was busy. I have work commitments. This is all part of my job. You live off my salary, so don't act so high and mighty. I couldn't respond. I had quit my job to take care of the kids, and we lived off the money my husband gave us. He only gave the bare minimum, so we were always just scraping by. I didn't have any money of my own. So when he brought up money, I felt powerless. But Matthew's behavior got worse. Some nights he wouldn't come home until very late. I feared he was getting into trouble. Despite my efforts to talk to both Matthew and my husband, neither listened. My husband and I started fighting every day, and then he began coming home less and less. This went on for years. I was over 50 and Matthew was in his last year of high school. I thought we'd understand each other once his rebellious phase was over, but that wasn't the case. He either ignored me or shouted at me. We couldn't have a proper conversation. My relationship with my husband was broken. Then, one day, he brought a young woman home. Who is this? She's 20 years younger than me, and she's pregnant. We need to get divorced. My husband said, deeply apologetic. Honestly, I had suspected his affair for a long time, so I wasn't surprised. But I couldn't believe he'd bring her to our home, where our children lived. The woman smiled at me. Hi there, I'm Chloe. I was amazed she could smile, knowing she was the other woman. She was 35, 20 years younger than my husband, dressed in revealing clothes and heavily made up. She looked so different from me, with my increasing wrinkles. I honestly don't see you as a woman anymore. I want to take responsibility for Chloe's child, so I'm sorry, but we need to divorce. I had reached my breaking point with these two selfish individuals. I had endured for the sake of our children and our life together, but I no longer felt any love for my husband. He had been out having fun while I struggled all these years. I decided to make him realize the hardships I faced and plotted my revenge. Surprisingly, my husband was pleading, and I simply nodded in agreement. All right. What? You're okay with it? He seemed shocked by my quick agreement. Of course. Here's the divorce paper. I'm taking everyone except the eldest son. His face twisted in confusion. What? Take the eldest son too. I couldn't believe what he was saying. That's not possible. He's your son from a previous marriage. We're not related by blood, and we don't get along. So what? You said you'd love him like your own. Yes, I did. I've always treated him like family. I never treated him differently from the younger kids and did my best to care for him. Then take responsibility till the end. The mistress chimed in. Yeah, right. I can't be a mother to a high schooler. Let the old lady take care of him. Matthew was probably hearing all of this. He had been distant and rebellious, but this was just too cruel. He's the child you had with your ex-wife. Take responsibility for him. Are you heartless? Who's the heartless one here? You never took care of him. If you won't, I won't divorce you. He scratched his head in annoyance and sighed deeply. Fine, I'll take care of Matthew. What? I can't be a mother to such an old kid. Sorry, but it's just a few more years. Bear with it. Fine, but buy me the new bag from my favorite brand. He smirked and said, All right. Seeing the two of them about to get cozy, I handed over the divorce papers. Can you sign this quickly? I'll take it tomorrow. Always in a rush, aren't you? He grumbled but signed. I took the signed papers and securely placed them in my bag. By the way, can you even live on your own after the divorce? You don't have a job or a place to stay. I feel sorry for the kids. He laughed smugly. He probably thinks I'm just a housewife with no savings. Thanks for your concern, but I have a job, so I'll be fine. What? You started working? It's probably just part-time, right? You can't live on that. It's not part-time. I went back to my web design job. I can work from home with just a computer. Last month, I earned over $100,000, so I think I'll manage. Really? My husband looked frustrated. A few years ago, I used my savings from when I worked to buy a computer. Then, I started working as a web designer from home. Having prior experience, I quickly found work and saved up, anticipating a future divorce. That's why I was ready with the divorce papers. I smirked at my husband, who thought he had the upper hand. By the way, are you two going to be okay? What do you mean? Child support. I'll need it for Ella and Henry until they're adults. He looked troubled. It's his responsibility to support his children. Just because we're divorcing doesn't mean he can abandon his duties. We'll discuss the amount through lawyers later. I'm thinking around $400 a month for both. $400 a month? That's too much. What are you talking about? They're in middle school now, and there are expenses for club activities and tutoring. Child support isn't just for food and utilities. It's actually a modest amount. Is it that much? He probably didn't know since he never got involved in our finances. Ella and Henry, who are in sports clubs, have expenses like shoes, uniforms, and practice gear. Plus, there are costs for away games. $200 per child per month might be a stretch for him. By the way, your girlfriend knows, right? Huh? I smiled at the mistress. Compensation for the affair? You've been having an affair for years, so I'll be seeking compensation. I'll consult with a lawyer, but it might be a hefty sum. Be prepared. What? I didn't know about that. It's not my fault. Do you think being over 30 and claiming ignorance will save you? By the way, I have all the evidence, so playing dumb won't help. I had hired a private investigator when my husband started staying out. I knew about the affair and had photos as proof. With all the evidence, there's no escaping. But the mistress, not wanting to admit the truth, cried out. To begin with, it's obvious that she's cheating on him when she's pregnant, so there's no way she can escape. However, as if she didn't want to admit that fact, her cheating partner yelled in panic. "I don't have that kind of money! I don't even have savings, and I'm pregnant." "That's not my problem. If you can't pay, ask the man next to you." She grabbed and shook my husband. "You'll pay for me, right?" "I've got my hands full with child support. You pay the affair compensation." "Why? You earn money, pay it." "I spent it all on gifts for you. Do you know how much I spent on you?" "What? I didn't know you were broke." The atmosphere between the two had turned sour. She was probably after his money. Otherwise, why would she date a man in his 50s? It was my husband's fault for having his hands on another woman while still married to me. My husband was at fault for cheating while married, but she was equally guilty for continuing the relationship. I wanted her to pay her dues. "I thought you'd take care of me and buy me anything I wanted. That's why I considered marrying you. I didn't know about any affair compensation. I won't pay." "You can refuse, but I'll consult my lawyer. See you in court?" When I mentioned court, she panicked and stood up. "I can't do this. I don't want to marry this old man and be in debt, especially not with a college-aged son. I'm leaving." "Wait, please." The mistress grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. My husband tried to stop her, but she pushed him away, causing him to fall on his rear. It was quite a comical sight. "Oh, she ran off on you." "It's all your fault. Look what you've done." He angrily got up. "Try anything and I'll call the police." This is all because you interfered in our marriage." I burst out laughing at his words. "Interfered? So, neglecting me and our family is just a natural consequence for you?" He fell silent, glaring at me, still not fully grasping the situation. I decided to drop another bombshell. "Just a reminder, Matthew's annual tuition is due this week." "What?" "I mean, he's starting college in the spring, right? You need to pay his annual tuition. You're taking care of Matthew, aren't you?" He looked puzzled. Having neglected our eldest son for years, he probably wasn't aware of his college plans or the costs. "How much is it?" "It's a private college, so around $40,000. $40,000? How am I supposed to afford that?" "Well, that's just for the first year. With tuition, facility fees, and other costs, it'll probably total around $1 million over the years. Good luck." "You're kidding." I was surprised myself. I went to a public university and had no idea private colleges could be so expensive. He probably didn't expect this either. "Why did you let him apply to such an expensive school?" "It's not my fault. I told Matthew to study, but he didn't listen. And you never helped me when I asked for advice." "But you can't just enroll him in a college like that. I won't accept it." "Then talk to him. It was his decision to go there." He fell silent again. Having neglected his parenting duties for so long, he probably didn't know how to approach Matthew. I have no intention of worrying about those two. We'll pack up our things and leave. As I stood up, he suddenly grabbed my arm. "Wait, let's try again." "What are you talking about?" "I've changed my mind. For the kids, we shouldn't divorce." He looked serious, but I knew it was all an excuse. "You just don't want to pay child support and compensation, right?" "No, wait, I can't be with you." "I promise I won't cheat again. Let's start over." "Absolutely not." I couldn't imagine living with someone who neglected his family, partied all the time, and got a woman 20 years younger pregnant. "You seem to misunderstand. I didn't agree to divorce just because you asked. I've wanted to for a long time. I just couldn't afford it. Now that I've saved up, it's perfect timing. Even if you hadn't asked, I would have." "Then why?" "I've always wanted to get a divorce, but I just couldn't get a divorce because I didn't have the money. I've been working hard and I'm saving money, so it was a good fit. Even if you didn't say you wanted a divorce, that's what I was going to say. He was speechless. Did he really think I still loved him after everything? I'm not a saint enough to love my husband, who has done such terrible things to me. But the kids need both parents. Divorce is bad for them. Just then, our eldest daughter and younger son stormed out of their rooms. I don't want to live with a father like you. Me neither. Ella, Henry, how can you say that to your parent? They stood by me, glaring at him. You never did anything for us, and now you act like a father? Someone who cheats all the time is just disgusting. I'd rather live with Mom than with someone like you. You guys. He seemed more shocked than angry, standing there with his mouth open. You think just because they're kids they don't understand? They see everything and can judge right from wrong. Did you really think they'd still like you just because you're their father? I was wrong. Please, forgive me. I'll do anything. Buy you anything you want. Take you anywhere. We don't want any of that. I don't even want to see your face. My children's words brought my husband to his knees. Did he really think he could still bribe middle schoolers with things? If so, he's seriously underestimating them. Ever since elementary school, they've seen the hardships I've faced and have been such caring kids. They wouldn't forgive him easily. We packed our things and left without saying a word to my husband, who was still on the floor. In the end, we divorced. Now he's probably struggling with alimony and child support payments. Apparently, his mistress gave birth, so he's also paying child support to her. Considering he'll be paying until the child is an adult, he'll likely be paying even after retirement. He got involved with a younger woman, and it's turned out to be a costly mistake. And since he never did any housework, I've heard his home is a mess. He can't even do laundry properly, wearing wrinkled shirts repeatedly, which has made him unpopular at work and in the neighborhood. With his mistress and children gone, and no money for leisure, he's become a shadow of his former self. But that's no longer my concern. And so, we started our new life. Ella, Henry, you'll be late for middle school. Coming! Both of them ran to the door with their bags. Matthew, you need to leave soon too, or you'll be late. Yeah, so naggy. Matthew, now in a suit, headed to the door. The day we decided to divorce and leave, I found Matthew standing in the hallway. He'd been listening to our conversation. I couldn't leave him like that, so I approached him. What do you want to do? After some thought, he decided to come with me. Honestly, paying for Matthew's college would make our future finances tight, but he's a victim too. He's been neglected by his father, and with me busy with the younger kids, he's been alone during the times he needed us most. I couldn't abandon him. The father never comes home and just plays around. And I couldn't take care of my younger child because my hands were full. My eldest son was always alone during the period when he needed to be pampered. I couldn't abandon my eldest son like that. When we moved to our new apartment, Matthew said he wanted to drop out of college. I'll work and pay for everything. I appreciated his sentiment, but doubted he could find a good job with just a high school diploma. So I made a suggestion. How about studying programming? Programming? Yes, in today's digital age, if you can program, you'll always have job opportunities. Study hard for a year and I'll cover all living expenses. Surprisingly, he agreed and studied diligently. In just 6 months, he was skilled enough to get freelance work, and this year he secured a full-time position. The kids, dressed in their school uniforms and suits, were making a ruckus at the door. Watch your tone with Mom. Anyone who complains doesn't get a ride. Liar, drive us. Don't crash, bro. The younger kids who once feared Matthew are now close to him. As they finished putting on their shoes, all three turned to me. We're off! Watching them leave, I never imagined we'd have days like this. It feels like Matthew is finally part of our family. I vowed to do everything for my children's happiness from now on.